Good morning, and welcome to our Unitarian Universalist Cooperative Summer Worship Series for 2020. I'm Kendall Gibbons, Senior Minister at the All Souls UU Church in Kansas City, Missouri. When our congregations pivoted suddenly to online worship back in March, in response to the outbreak of the coronavirus pandemic, we all had to invent new formats and adapt to new technologies instantly. Many of our ministers and tech staff and volunteers rose to the occasion with great creativity and skill. Now, during our traditional summer break and study time, we take this opportunity to share our discoveries and learn from each other through a series of virtual visits to Sunday services with a cluster of our neighbor congregations. Through the gift of online worship, you will hear from some of our newest up-and-coming young preachers and some of our wisest senior colleagues. You will experience how a variety of congregations have embraced the challenges of these new formats. And our sound, video, and streaming tech folks will enjoy a little well-deserved time off. Look for our separate community online gatherings to resume in September. We hope that today's message will rouse your spirit and resonate with your soul.
Good morning, everyone. I am Dick Beeman, and I want to extend a warm welcome from the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan, Kansas, to all of you who have zoomed in from within and maybe even from beyond our participating cluster of Unitarian Universalist neighbors. We Manhattanites welcome each of you to our community, whoever you are and wherever you are on your path. In isolation, we falter, and in community, we thrive. But even in seeking belonging in that community, you should be you, not someone else. A community is a choir singing in harmony, not in unison. And it doesn't matter whether you are prosperous or struggling, a big wig or a small fry, a skeptic or a believer, a head in the clouds type or a nose to the grindstone type, whether you are black or white or both or neither, whether you are gay or straight or both or neither, male or female or both or neither, or all of the above or none of the above. All of us, each in our unique and beautiful imperfection, contribute to the orchestration of a more vibrant community. And so this morning I renew the invitation to each of you to visit, to join, to rededicate to our Unitarian Universalist community and to the sister communities that we hope it touches in ever-widening circles of connectedness. Let today's chalice flame represent the pure, bright light of fiber optic illumination. In your communications, in your interactions with others, be like an optical fiber. An optical fiber is flexible, it is transparent, it conducts and transmits light without heat, faithfully, brightly, and provides illumination with clarity, undiminished and untainted. It depends on the proper degree of internal reflection, and it minimizes incoherent scattering. Be a fiber optic conduit of truth and light.
We are going, heaven knows where we are going, but we know within, and we will get there. Heaven knows how we will get there, but we know we will. It will be hard, we know.
The Bundle of Sticks. A father had a family of children who were forever quarreling among themselves. No words he could say did the least bit of good. One day, when the quarreling had been much more violent than usual, and each of the children was moping in a surly manner, he asked one of them to bring him a bundle of sticks. Then, handing the bundle to each of his children, he told them to try to break it. But although each one tried hard, none was able to do so. The father then untied the bundle and gave the sticks to his children to break one by one. This they did very easily. "My children," said the father, "do you not see how certain it is that if you agree with each other and help each other, it will be impossible for your enemies to injure you? But if you are divided among yourselves, you will be no stronger than a single stick. There is strength together."
Part of being a part of a religious community is knowing that we all benefit from this community in ways both seen and unseen, and that looks different for each of us. It also means that we each give back to this community in ways seen and unseen that vary from person to person. And one of the ways that we recognize that is each Sunday, as part of our worship, we take up a collection to support the programs of this church and our partners in the wider community. We're about to take up the offering this morning while we are in this physically distanced time. Our offering is via text, so if you will simply text UC Lincoln and the amount to 73256 and follow the prompts from there. So again, to give to our offering this morning, text UC Lincoln and the amount you wish to give to 73256. Thank you so much.
Today's offertory is entitled Christofori's Dream by David Lanz, and it will be performed by Renee Brown, who is our Director of Music at the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of Manhattan.
1 Corinthians chapter 12, verses 14 through 26. Indeed, the body does not consist of one member, but of many. If the foot would say, "Because I am not a hand, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body. And if the ear would say, "Because I am not an eye, I do not belong to the body," that would not make it any less a part of the body. If the whole body were an eye, where would the hearing be? If the whole body were hearing, where would the sense of smell be? But as it is, God arranged the members of the body, each one of them as he chose. If all were a single member, where would the body be? As it is, there are many members, yet one body. The eye cannot say to the hand, "I have no need of you," nor again the head to the feet, "I have no need of you." On the contrary, the members of the body that seem to be weaker are indispensable. And those members of the body that we think less honorable, we clothe with greater honor. And our less respectable members are treated with greater respect, whereas our more respectable members do not need this. But God has so arranged the body, giving the greater honor to the inferior member, that there may be no dissension within the body, but the members may have the same care for one another. If one member suffers, all suffer together with it. If one member is honored, all rejoice together with it.
We need one another when we mourn and would be comforted. We need one another when we are in trouble and afraid.
We need one another when we are in despair, in temptation, and need to be recalled to our best selves again. We need one another when we would accomplish some great purpose and cannot do it alone.
We need one another in the hour of success, when we look for someone to share our triumphs. We need one another in the hour of defeat, when with encouragement we might endure and stand again.
We need one another when we come to die and would have gentle hands prepare us for the journey. All our lives we are in need.
All our lives we are in need.
All our lives we are in need.
All our lives we are in need, and others are in need of us.
I'm not a stranger to the dark. Hide away, they say, 'cause we don't want your broken parts. I've learned to be ashamed of all my scars. Run away, they say, no one will love you as you are. But I won't let them break me down to dust. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. When the sharpest words want to cut me down, I'm gonna send the flood, gonna drown 'em out. I am brave, I am bruised, I am who I'm meant to be. This is me, look out, 'cause here I come. And I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. Another round of bullets hits my skin. Well, fire away, 'cause today I won't let the shame sink in. We're bursting through the barricades and reaching for the sun. We are warriors, and that's what This is me. This is me.
When the sharpest words wanna cut me down, gonna send a flood, gonna drown 'em out. This is brave, this is bruised, this is who I'm meant to be, this is me.
Look out, 'cause here I come, and I'm marching on to the beat I drum. I'm not scared to be seen, I make no apologies. This is me. This is me.
The song we just heard comes from the movie musical that's about P.T. Barnum, a 19th century Universalist. No, that part wasn't in the movie. Barnum was a Universalist, though, and a lot more controversial than the movie indicated. He exhibited people, freaks they were called, a practice that looks repellent to us today. And he did it despite his belief in the Universalist principle that all are equally loved by God. We human beings are full of contradictions. I don't know whether the collection of people exhibited and exploited by Barnum formed the community that the movie depicted. I imagine that they may have formed some kind of community because the drive for connection among us is so deep. What I want to do, though, is remove the song from its context and say something about the lyrics. A lot of them are first person singular. This is me. I won't let them break me down to dust. And then without warning, without explanation, it slips into the plural. I know there's a place for us, for we are glorious. Last week I had an epiphany about community. I've been working with a group that is hosting conversations about race. And the theme for the next big community gathering, and for those of you who are part of UUFM, it will be on September 14th, so mark your calendar. Anyway, the theme for this online gathering is who's thriving and who's surviving. That's our frame for consideration of health and economics, central topics in this COVID world we now live in. Now, my epiphany came in hearing about an immigrant who's going to be part of the panel. He came from Kenya and lives in our community, an academic, and in the ways we were looking at things, clearly thriving. Good job, good income, good health. His children are growing up here, and he figures they will stay in America. He wants to go back to Kenya, though. Because the truth is, he isn't really thriving. He misses being part of a truly interconnected community that is real, vital, and engaged. He finds the culture here disjointed, with no place to connect. And here's my insight. When we, as the committee planning this event, a multiracial committee from diverse backgrounds, when we thought about thriving and surviving, we had only thought about health and economics. Social connection had not even occurred to us. Yet social connection is what we are profoundly missing and longing for right now. We tend to know ourselves as consumers and as individual bodies, not as members of community. We too easily forget that being in community is vital to thriving as a human being. It takes a Kenyan immigrant to remind me. A colleague of mine, Reverend Susan Smith, once made a trip to Africa to meet with African UUs. They are a growing movement on that continent. She found that they did everything together. They planned, they worshiped, they worked, they raised money, they built community. When she said she was going to make a trip to visit another group while she was there on the continent, everyone wanted to come along. Connection and community were woven through life in a radical way. The needs of one were the needs of the group. Now, the issue of individualism is cultural. It's American. And as much as we UUs like to view ourselves as countercultural, the issue of individualism is also distinctly Unitarian Universalist. Reverend Fred Muir, in his Berry Street essay from 2012, From iChurch to Beloved Community, spoke of UUs as holding a trinity of errors that together flow into this challenge of being in community. First, he said, and this is where we're going to focus today, first, we are being held captive, says Muir, by a persistent, pervasive, disturbing, and disruptive commitment to individualism that misguides our ability to engage the changing times. That is our focus, but I want to name the other two errors because they are related, though I don't have time to address them specifically this morning. The second error, Unitarian Universalist exceptionalism that is often insulting to others and undermines our good news. We might call it what I've heard people in the recovery community refer to as our terminal uniqueness. And the third error he cites, we refuse to acknowledge and treat our allergy to authority and power. So though the focus is on the first of those listed errors, I do want to acknowledge that these three intertwine like a braid down our backs, easily forgotten when we don't remember that it's there. Trust thyself, said the 19th century transcendentalist Ralph Waldo Emerson, and we have tattooed that expression on our hearts, forgetting that we also need to trust one another if we are to live together and thrive. Not that that is counter to the culture that surrounds us. Look at the reaction to masks and other controls around COVID. The New York Times investigated why we in America have done so poorly in comparison to other places, and they reported, first, the United States has a tradition of prioritizing individualism over government restrictions. That aversion to collective action helped lead to inadequate state lockdowns and inconsistent adherence to mask wearing. We, Americans and Unitarian Universalists, don't truly believe in collective action. We admire and emulate the radical individual who strikes out on their own, marching to that different drummer and forges the pathway through the wilderness. And especially in the western part of the U.S., we extol the achievements of that singular person, usually white and male to be sure, often ignoring and even denying the support structures around him, and I'm using him deliberately here, that allow him to make that choice. We forget that those individuals could not have succeeded without the Homestead Act and the militarized removal of native peoples who resisted westward expansion. That lone homesteader relied not only on his wife and children and sometimes community, but on the entire force of the U.S. government collective action writ large to make his way in what he saw as wilderness. The result, both for all Americans and for UUs, the recent report from the UUA Commission on Institutional Change put it this way: this centering of the individual decenters the communal as a locus of theological exploration. The centering of the individual decenters the communal as a locus of theological exploration. Okay, that's way too academic. They're saying we put the individual above the group, so we don't know how to find meaning together as a group. We have lost something valuable. We have lost the vitality of community that the Kenyan immigrant was concerned with. Though we UUs may be motivated by the individual of Emerson, while others are inspired by the individualism of Ayn Rand, the problem of individualism remains regardless of who your hero is. Reverend Muir helps make a useful distinction in his essay between individuality, which is what's celebrated in that choral anthem, "This is me," and individualism, a philosophical stance of emphasizing individual liberty even at the expense of the group. While there are times we need to bow to the individual because we take their needs seriously, there are other times when the individual's will does not meet the needs of the group. Think about the people who insist it's their right to not wear a mask. They're putting a small personal desire, something not much more potent than a whim, above the social good of everyone they encounter. I think most of you understand that and agree wholeheartedly. But I caution you, though, that that particular example may make us feel self-righteous and exceptional behind our masks and on our online services. So let me share a short testimony about Unitarian Universalism from Benjamin Anatis. Emerson's tacit endorsement of a radically self-centered worldview is a lot like the model of the planets that preceded Copernicus. The sun, moon, and the stars revolve around our portable chairs, and whatever contradicts our right to harbor misconceptions is the prattle of the unenlightened majority and can be dismissed out of hand. The Commission on Institutional Change observed that people who came into Unitarian Universalism between the 1960s and the 1980s, that would include me, were attracted to the faith because they were escaping what they saw as non-rational, demeaning, or illogical religious beliefs and practices. In the lack of creeds, they found Unitarian Universalism as a door to personal freedom. I know a woman named Linda who said that discovering Unitarian Universalism meant for her that she found a church that believed in Lindaism. Now, if that has been your experience, I'd like to challenge your thinking a bit. Individualism is not best practiced in a group, because sooner or later, and it's likely sooner, you're going to run into someone who disagrees with you, another individual. Individualism is at the root of the divisiveness of this country, because if I am only concerned about my own good, about what works for me, about what I get out of it, it's hard to come into agreement with anyone else. It's hard to share community with anyone else. It's hard to build anything. To decrease the influence of individualism requires a deliberate effort to sacrifice my own goals to the good of the group. Now, UUs are not thrilled by that word sacrifice. Neither are Americans in general. But if we are going to truly center the group instead of the individual, we have to take sacrifice seriously. I read a simple example from Ted Raw, one of the co-founders of the nonprofit organization Sociocracy for All. Sociocracy is an approach to governance and working together that centers small teams and deep listening. Anyway, Raw described how he was in this meeting where a new idea was introduced that he knew would cause him substantial headaches and difficulty in implementation. And when it came his turn to speak, he expressed strongly how much personal inconvenience it would be to him and how much he hated the idea. And then, when the time came for the members of the team to say whether or not they supported it, he did. Well, others nearly fell off their chairs. But here's the thing, even though he hated this idea and knew it would make his life difficult for him, he also had listened to others and knew that the idea was truly for the benefit of the group and would help the group meet its goals, and he was perfectly willing to make the personal sacrifice for the good of the group. He was still allowed to hate the idea, but he would help make it work. On the other hand, the podcast, Nice White Parents, talks about how school integration and therefore decent schools for children of color were stymied in New York City. Who did that? Yes, nice white parents. One of them says, I believed in integration, but I didn't want to sacrifice my children to it. The sacrifices we make to be part of a real community can be painful, right down to the family level. Sikh activist and attorney Valerie Carr describes her experience in transition during childbirth. When she felt like she could not go on, like she was going to die, her mother comforted her. And then she imagined her grandmother standing behind her mother, and her great-grandmother, and generation after generation extending back and back and back. All these women in a line going through the generations and uniting everyone together in this moment, in this birth. Love, she says, is sweet labor. She recognizes that community, even family, is grounded in hard, painful work. And what's more, revolutionary love is the choice to enter into labor. She writes, the call to love beyond our own flesh and blood is ancient. It echoes down to us on the lips of indigenous leaders, spiritual teachers, and social reformers through the centuries. The founder of Sikhism, Guru Nanak, calls us to see no stranger, Buddha to practice unending compassion, Abraham to open our tent to all, Jesus to love our neighbors, Muhammad to take in the orphan, Hindu mystic Saint Mirabai to love without limit. They all expanded the circle of who counts as one of us, and therefore who is worthy of our care and concern. These teachings were rooted in the linguistic, cultural, and spiritual context of their time, but they spoke of a common vision of interconnectedness and interdependence. That's the transition in spirit we have to be able to make. Expanding the circle of who counts as one of us. Yes, this is me, but this is also you and you and you. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. And Carl also teaches that the sacrifice is worth it because it gains something greater than what we have set aside and lost. The vital, real, connected community, the beloved community, is worth it. So how do we make that leap from individual persons to a people? First, we must take care in how we think about our community. In UU congregations, individualism plays out in some particular ways. We individuals love our congregation. We feel ownership of it. We think of it as our family. And that's a metaphor. And metaphors have deep power. Metaphors shape how we view the world and our relationships. What does it mean that we are family? Paula Cole-Jones, an African-American UU who has worked extensively on racial inclusion and justice, in her 2019 FOS lecture explored some of the challenges. Family structures, she reminds us, often have a pecking order. We know who we can bring home and who would not really be welcome. And it can be hard to hold family accountable. We know where the power lies. If you've ever tried to interrupt racism or sexism in your family systems, you know how tough it is. Oh, that's just Uncle Bob. That's how he is. Family gives preference and precedent to who is already there. And it respects their individualism, not just their individuality, because it centers on those who are already established in it. Jones claims of Unitarian Universalists, we're a big tent, using little tent metaphors. So it might be instructive to consider how we live in a larger, more diverse group than we've become accustomed to in our UU congregations. We might shift our metaphors from family to beloved community. Jones, in fact, suggests that we think about ourselves as a community of communities, an interlocked and connected ecosystem that gives us the comfort of home while challenging us to a larger, more diverse world. And in doing what looks like a sacrifice at first, it actually becomes life-giving, life-affirming. Reverend Shirley Strong, who was formerly with the Church for the Fellowship of All Peoples in San Francisco, notes, many social activists have come to realize that there's something missing in the struggle for justice and human rights. We've lost our connection to spirituality in the sense of being connected to something greater than ourselves, something whose inherent outcome is the creation of beloved community. And our own institution, our own Commission on Institutional Change says similar things. We regain that connection to something larger by sacrificing individualism, not individuality, but individualism. And that may have been what Paul was aiming at when he spoke about the contributions of the different parts of the body. We need the diversity of different talents, different backgrounds, different orientations. Another religious leader, Abdul Baha, the son of Baha'u'llah, the highest prophet of the Baha'i religion, wrote similarly, this diversity of humanity, this difference, is like the naturally created dissimilarity and variety of the limbs and organs of the human body, for each one contributeth to the beauty, efficiency, and perfection of the whole. We may need a Kenyan immigrant to point out how disconnected we Americans are. We may need a Sikh activist to conjure a line of ancestors extending back into time. We may need an African American UU to call us into a community of communities. We may need all the cloud of witnesses past and present to break down the barriers of individualism so we can huddle together in the warmth of one another's care. We say yes to our individuality, but in order to say yes to other people's individuality, we have to begin thinking in we. I know that there's a place for us, for we are glorious. Or as UU Reverend Teresa Soto has said, all of us need all of us to survive. Amen. Blessed be. Ashe.
Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land. Come and go with me to that land where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land. There'll be freedom in that land where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land. There'll be justice in that land where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound, where I'm bound. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land. There'll be singing in that land where I'm bound.
Remember, you can't do this journey alone. Remember, you can't let others do this journey alone. Remember, we need one another, and you are needed. Remember, all of us need all of us to survive.